Captain John Miller stood on the bridge of the UES Valiant, looking out at the vast emptiness of space. Earth had changed a lot since the 2060s. Nations had put aside their differences and united against bigger threats: climate change, resource scarcity, and the unknown dangers of space. The United Earth Defense Force was their shield against whatever might be out there in the darkness. "Captain, we're picking up something strange near Pluto's orbit," said Lieutenant Susan Adams. Her eyes fixed on the screen, John walked over to her station. "What kind of something?" "I'm not sure, sir. It's massive, but it wasn't there in our last scan. Show me." The main screen flickered to life, displaying a blinking dot beyond Pluto. The object was moving toward the inner solar system at an impossible speed. "Get me a better image," John ordered. The screen zoomed in, and everyone on the bridge fell silent. A massive ship, unlike anything humans had built, was heading straight for Earth. Its dark metal surface was covered with strange patterns that seemed to glow with an inner light. "Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we've made first contact." Now, response from Earth was immediate. The Valiant was to maintain position and attempt communication while a diplomatic team was assembled. 3 days later, Ambassador Lisa Rodriguez arrived on the Valiant. She was calm and focused despite the weight of her mission. "Captain Miller," she said, shaking his hand. "I understand we're about to make history." "Let's hope it's the good kind," John replied. The alien vessel had slowed its approach and now hung in space near Neptune. It had responded to Earth's signals with its own, and Earth's best linguists had been working around the clock to understand them. "They call themselves the Krell-Tharan Dominion," Lisa explained during the briefing. "From what we can tell, they're interested in peaceful contact." "Then why bring a ship that size?" asked John. The alien vessel was massive, easily 100 times larger than the Valiant. "We're new to them. Maybe they were being cautious," Lisa suggested. "In any case, they've invited us aboard." John didn't like it, but orders were orders. A small team consisting of John, Lisa, and 3 specialists would take a shuttle to the alien ship. As they approached, John couldn't help feeling small. The Krell-Tharan vessel dwarfed anything humans had ever built. It opened like a flower, revealing a docking bay where their shuttle could land. Inside, the air was breathable, and the gravity felt almost like Earth's. They were met by tall, slender beings with pale blue skin and 4 arms. Their leader introduced himself as High Commander Xerix. "Welcome, humans," Xerix said, his words translated by a device one of his assistants held. "We have long watched your world from afar. It is time our peoples met." Lisa stepped forward. "We are honored by your invitation and look forward to peaceful relations between our species." The next few days were filled with meetings and exchanges of information. The Krell-Tharan seemed genuinely interested in Earth culture and technology, though they were clearly far more advanced. They spoke of trade and cultural exchange, and Lisa was optimistic about the possibilities. On the 4th day, while exploring a part of the ship with one of the junior Krell-Tharan officers, John noticed something odd. The officer had left a data pad unattended. John couldn't read the alien text, but he could copy it. He slipped the data into a scanner and returned to the human quarters. "Can you make anything of this?" he asked Dr. Helen Park, their xenolinguist. Helen worked through the night using the translation algorithms they'd developed. By morning, her face was pale. "Captain Ambassador, you need to see this," she said, her voice shaking. "These aren't trade agreements they've been discussing with us. These are invasion plans." Lisa stared at the translated text in disbelief. "They've been studying Earth for decades, identifying our weaknesses. They don't want peace, they want our resources, they want Earth itself." "We need to get this information back to Earth immediately," John said. But before they could act, an alarm sounded throughout the ship. They were summoned to meet with High Commander Xerix. The Krell-Tharan leader's demeanor had changed. Gone was the friendly diplomat, replaced by a cold military commander. "We have detected your intrusion into our systems," Xerix said. "A pity. We had hoped to maintain the charade a little longer." "Why?" Lisa demanded. "Why pretend to want peace?" "It is simpler to take a world when its defenses are down," Xerix replied. "Your Earth has resources we need. Your oceans, your minerals, your people as labor. You will serve the Dominion. Earth will never surrender, John said. Then Earth will burn. Xerix turned to his officers. Return them to their vessel. Send the message to our fleet. The invasion begins now. Under guard, John and the others were escorted back to their shuttle. As soon as they were away from the alien ship, John pushed the engines to maximum. Earth Command, he transmitted. This is Captain Miller of the Valiant. First contact has failed. The aliens are hostile. Repeat, the Krell-Tharan are hostile. They plan to invade Earth. But even as he sent the warning, hundreds of smaller ships were launching from the massive Krell-Tharan vessel. The Valiant shook as enemy fire struck its shields. They're not trying to destroy us, Susan realized. They're herding us toward Earth. They want us to see what's coming. They could only watch in horror as the Krell-Tharan ships accelerated past them toward the inner solar system. Earth had orbital defenses, but nothing that could stand against this armada. The first target was the Moon. Earth's lunar colonies had been established 15 years earlier, home to nearly 10,000 people. The Krell-Tharan ships didn't bother with precision strikes. They simply bombarded the surface until nothing remained but dust and ruins. No, Lisa whispered as they watched the destruction on their screens. All those people, Earth's orbital stations were next. The International Space Platform, the Chinese Harmony Station, the private habitats built by corporations, all were destroyed in minutes. Only then did the main Krell-Tharan vessel approach Earth itself. It positioned itself in orbit and broadcast a message to every screen and speaker on the planet. People of Earth, you are now subjects of the Krell-Tharan Dominion. Surrender your governments and military forces immediately. Resistance is futile and will result in planetary bombardment. You have 6 hours to comply. On the Valiant, John Miller watched the ultimatum with clenched fists. There was no way back to Earth. The path was blocked by Krell-Tharan ships, but the Valiant was still intact, still armed. What are your orders, Captain? Susan asked, her voice steady despite everything they'd witnessed. John looked at his crew, at Lisa, at the distant blue sphere of Earth surrounded by hostile ships. We find a way to fight back, he said. They tried to force Earth to kneel. We're going to answer, with fire. 3 months had passed since the Krell-Tharan invasion began. Earth was no longer the peaceful, united world it had once been. Major cities lay in ruins. The aliens controlled the skies and had established bases in strategic locations across the planet. Millions were dead. Billions lived under alien rule. But humanity had not surrendered. Colonel Samantha Wright crouched in the burnt-out shell of what had once been a shopping mall in Chicago. Her resistance cell had grown from 20 soldiers to over 200 fighters in the past month alone. Regular people, teachers, doctors, office workers had joined the fight, learning to use weapons and guerrilla tactics against the alien occupiers. They're moving another supply convoy through downtown, said Frank Garcia, her scout. 6 hover trucks, with Krell-Tharan guards. Samantha nodded. Perfect. Tell everyone to get in position. The plan was simple but effective. They would hit the convoy, take what supplies they could, and disappear back into the ruins of the city before reinforcements arrived. They had done this 5 times already. Each success brought more people to their cause. Remember, she told her fighters over the radio, aim for the breathing apparatus on their necks. It's their weak point. As the alien convoy rounded the corner, Samantha gave the signal. Explosives hidden in the road detonated, disabling the lead and rear vehicles. The resistance fighters opened fire from windows and rooftops. The Krell-Tharan guards fought back, their energy weapons cutting through concrete like it was paper. But they were outnumbered and taken by surprise. In less than 10 minutes, it was over. The aliens were dead and the humans were loading food, medicine, and weapons into their own vehicles. We've got 5 minutes before their patrols respond, Samantha warned. Move fast. As her people worked, Samantha noticed something in one of the trucks. It wasn't supplies. It was a human prisoner, an older man with gray hair and tired eyes wearing the remains of what had once been a lab coat. Who are you? She asked as she cut his restraints. Dr. Alan Carter, he replied, his voice hoarse. Physics department at Northwestern University. They've been making me work for them at their research facility. Why would they need a human physicist? Dr. Carter's eyes darted around nervously. They're having trouble with Earth's magnetic field. It's interfering with some of their technology. I was supposed to help them solve it. Samantha made a quick decision. You're coming with us. Miles away in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, Captain John Miller stared at the tactical display aboard the UES Valiant. The ship had seen better days. Battle damage scarred its hull and they were constantly short on supplies. But it was still flying, still fighting. After the initial attack, Miller had realized they couldn't return to Earth. Instead, they had made their way to the asteroid belt, where mining operations had been established years ago. The miners had welcomed them, offering supplies and shelter among the rocks. Captain, Lieutenant Susan Adams called from her station. The mining ship Daedalus is returning. Miller nodded. The Daedalus was one of several mining vessels that had joined what they now called the Belt Fleet. Its captain, Hector Ramirez, had been a civilian until 3 months ago. Now he was one of Miller's most trusted allies. They hit a Krell-Theran freighter near Mars, Susan reported. Got away clean with a hold full of alien tech. This was how they survived now. Hit-and-run attacks on Krell-Theran supply ships, stealing what they needed, then disappearing back into the asteroid field where the aliens had trouble tracking them. The Belt Fleet had grown from just the Valiant to over 30 ships of various sizes. Most were mining vessels converted for combat, but they had also been joined by 3 military ships that had escaped Earth during the invasion. Ambassador Lisa Rodriguez had remained with them. Her diplomatic skills were now used to mediate between the different factions within the fleet. Not everyone agreed on how to fight the aliens, but they all wanted Earth back. John, Lisa said, entering the bridge. Hector brought back something interesting. You need to see this. In the cargo bay of the Daedalus, a team of engineers was examining a piece of Krell-Theran technology. It was a shield generator, similar to the ones that had made the alien ships nearly invulnerable during the initial attack. We've been studying their shield technology for weeks, explained Ben Cho, the fleet's chief engineer. This is the first intact generator we've captured. Can we use it? Miller asked. Better, Ben replied with a grin. We can break it. Look at this. He activated a device he had built. The alien shield generator sputtered and died. What did you just do? Lisa asked. The shields operate on a specific frequency, Ben explained. If we can generate a counter frequency, we can disrupt them, make their ships vulnerable. For the first time in months, Miller felt real hope. Can you build more of these disruptors? With the right materials, yes, but they have limited range. We'd need to get close to their ships for it to work. Then that's what we'll do, Miller said. We'll get close. Back on Earth, Dr. Carter had been brought to the Resistance's hidden base in an old subway station. After being checked by their doctor and given food and water, he sat down with Samantha. The Krell-Theran have a problem, he explained. Their technology is powerful, but it's sensitive to certain types of radiation. Earth's magnetic field is stronger and more variable than they expected. It's causing issues with their systems. Can we use that against them? Samantha asked. Maybe, Alan replied. I was working on a theory before they captured me. If we could generate a strong enough electromagnetic pulse tuned to the right frequency, we might be able to disable their technology temporarily. Samantha leaned forward. How temporarily? Minutes, maybe hours. Enough time to strike back. And how do we generate this pulse? Alan sighed. That's the hard part. We'd need access to major power stations. Most of those are under Krell-Theran control now. But not all of them, Samantha said with a small smile. We've got people inside. A hydroelectric plant in Wisconsin. It's still running, still providing power to the region. That could work, Alan said, his eyes widening. If we could modify the generators there, we might be able to create a localized pulse. How localized? Maybe a 100-mile radius, Samantha nodded. Enough to clear the skies over a major city, enough to give us a fighting chance. As they planned their next move, Neither the resistance on Earth nor the fleet in the asteroid belt knew about each other's breakthroughs. But across the solar system, humans were finding ways to fight back. The Krell-Tharan had expected Earth to fall quickly, to surrender in the face of superior technology and overwhelming force. They had not counted on human resilience, human ingenuity, or human courage. They had tried to force Earth to kneel. Humanity was preparing to answer with fire. 8 months into the occupation, Earth was a different planet. Cities that had once shined with light now lay in darkness. Forests had been cut down for alien construction projects. Oceans were harvested for their minerals. But something else had changed too. The resistance was growing stronger. Colonel Samantha Wright stood on a hill overlooking what had once been Denver. The city was now a massive Krell-Tharan processing center. Thousands of humans worked there under alien supervision, processing Earth's resources for shipment off-world. "Are you sure this will work?" she asked the man beside her. Dr. Alan Carter nodded. His device, which they had named the Prometheus Protocol, was ready. Over the past 5 months, they had tested it on smaller targets with increasing success. Today would be their biggest operation yet. "The pulse will disable their technology for approximately 45 minutes, Alan explained. "Everything with Krell-Tharan circuits will stop working. And our equipment? Protected, as long as everyone is using the shields we developed." Samantha gave the order over her secure radio. "All units prepare to move on my signal. Remember, once the pulse hits, we have 45 minutes to free as many people as possible and get out." She looked at her watch and counted down. 3, 2, 1, now. Alan activated the device. There was no sound, no visible effect, but across the valley, alien lights began to flicker and die. Krell-Tharan vehicles stopped moving. Their weapon systems went offline. "Go, go, go," Samantha ordered. Hundreds of resistance fighters emerged from hiding places around the facility. They moved quickly, taking down the confused aliens with conventional weapons. The Krell-Tharan, so dependent on their technology, were vulnerable without it. Meanwhile, in the asteroid belt, Lieutenant Eric Johnson prepared for the most dangerous mission of his life. Captain Miller had selected him to lead a small team to infiltrate a Krell-Tharan command ship. Their goal was to steal strategic information and, if possible, make contact with resistance forces on Earth. "The ship will be passing through this sector in 20 minutes, Susan Adams explained, pointing to a map. "We've modified a mining shuttle to match the radiation signature of their auxiliary craft. If they're not looking too closely, they should let you dock." Eric nodded. His team consisted of 4 other volunteers, all trained for combat but hoping to avoid it. Stealth was their ally here. "Remember," Captain Miller told them, "this is about information, not a firefight. Get in, download what you can from their systems, and get out." "Yes, sir," Eric replied. The plan worked better than they had hoped. The mining shuttle, disguised as a Krell-Tharan craft, was allowed to dock, without question. Once inside, Eric's team moved carefully through the massive ship, using the schematics they had pieced together from previous encounters. They reached the central data hub without being detected. While 2 team members stood guard, Eric and the others connected their devices to the alien system. Thanks to months of studying Krell-Tharan technology, they were able to bypass the security measures. "Look at this," whispered Nancy Kim, their computer specialist. "They're planning something big. A new weapon deployment." Eric looked at the screen. Even with their limited understanding of the alien language, the images were clear enough. The Krell-Tharan were building massive structures at key points around Earth. "Download everything," Eric ordered. "We need to get this back to the fleet." As they worked, an alarm suddenly blared throughout the ship. They had been discovered. "Finish the download," Eric told Nancy. "We'll hold them off." The corridor outside, the data hub quickly filled with Krell-Tharan soldiers. Eric and his team were outnumbered, but they had the advantage of position. For 15 tense minutes, they held back the aliens until Nancy announced the download was complete. "Now we run," Eric said. They fought their way back to their shuttle, losing 1 team member in the process. As they undocked and sped away from the command ship, Krell-Tharan fighters pursued them. "We're not going to outrun them," Nancy said. We don't need to, Eric replied. We just need to reach the rendezvous point. As if on cue, 3 ships from the Belt Fleet appeared, opening fire on the Kreltharan pursuers. Under their cover, Eric's shuttle made it back to the Valiant. What did you find? Captain Miller asked as soon as they were aboard. Sir, they're building something on Earth. Some kind of energy collectors. And there's more. We found communications. With their homeworld. The Kreltharan aren't working alone. They're part of something called the Dominion, a collection of species that conquer other worlds for resources. This was a game changer. Earth wasn't just fighting one alien species. They were fighting an entire coalition. But there was good news, too. Among the data they had stolen was information about other conquered species who were now fighting back against the Dominion. One group in particular, calling themselves the Voidaran Alliance, had been successful in liberating several of their worlds. If we could contact this alliance, Lisa Rodriguez suggested, we might gain valuable allies. And how do we do that? Miller asked. We can barely communicate with Earth, let alone across interstellar space. Actually, Eric said, the data includes the frequencies they use for secure communication. If we could boost our signal strength enough. On Earth, Samantha's operation had been a success. They had freed over 1,000 human workers from the Denver facility and destroyed key components of the alien processing plant. But as they regrouped at their hidden base, a new problem emerged. They're adapting, Alan explained, examining a piece of Kreltharan technology they had captured. They're starting to shield their systems against our electromagnetic pulse. How long until the Prometheus protocol is useless? Samantha asked. Hard to say. Weeks, maybe months. We need something stronger, more focused. A young radio operator interrupted them. Colonel, we're picking up a signal. It's weak, but it's definitely not Kreltharan, and it's coming from space. Samantha followed him to the communications equipment. Through the static, a human voice was barely audible. Earth Resistance. This is the UES Valiant. Captain. John Miller. We have information. Preparing counterstrike. For the first time since the invasion, Earth's resistance knew they weren't fighting alone. There were still human forces in space, and they had a plan. As Samantha's people worked to establish a clearer connection with the Valiant, Alan Carter studied the new Kreltharan technology with renewed determination. If the aliens were adapting, so would humanity. The war for Earth was entering a new phase. The Kreltharan had come expecting conquest. Instead, they had ignited a fire that was spreading across the planet and beyond. A fire of resistance, of hope, and of determination that would not be extinguished until Earth was free again. 1 year had passed since the day the Kreltharan arrived. Captain John Miller was no longer just a captain. The remaining military leaders had promoted him to admiral, giving him command of what they now called the United Resistance Fleet. The fleet had grown. What began as a small group of Earthships hiding in the asteroid belt had become a real fighting force. 3 weeks ago, they had made contact with the Voidaran Alliance, a coalition of species who had also suffered under Kreltharan rule. The Voidarans were tall, with pale skin and large eyes adapted to the dim light of their homeworld. Their ambassador, Kelisor, now stood beside Miller on the bridge of the Valiant. Your plan is bold, Admiral, Kelisor said. Perhaps too bold. Bold is all we have left, Miller replied. According to our intelligence, the Kreltharan are building planet-killer weapons at key points around Earth. Once those weapons are operational, we lose any chance of taking back our world. The plan was called Operation Firestorm. It would be a coordinated attack on multiple fronts, space, ground, and electronic warfare all happening simultaneously. The goal wasn't just to hurt the Kreltharan, but to break their control of Earth completely. The Voidaran Council has approved your request, Kelisor said. Our fleet will arrive to support yours in 3 days. Miller nodded. Thank you. Please, tell your council that Earth won't forget this alliance. On the planet below, Colonel Samantha Wright was preparing her part of Operation Firestorm. The ground forces of the Resistance had united under her command, forming a global army of over 200,000 fighters. The timing has to be perfect, she told her regional commanders during their secure video meeting. When the electromagnetic pulse hits, we'll have a short window to strike at their command centers. The largest Krell base on Earth had been built over the ruins of New York City. That would be Samantha's target. The aliens had converted the former United Nations headquarters into their central command post, a symbol of their dominance over humanity. Dr. Alan Carter had spent months perfecting the Prometheus protocol. What began as a localized electromagnetic pulse had evolved into a sophisticated weapon that could target Krell technology with surgical precision. The new version is ready, he told Samantha. We can deploy it globally now, through the remaining power grid. Every resistance cell has the shield technology to protect their own equipment. How long will it disable their systems? Samantha asked. 2 hours, Alan replied. Twice as long as before, but they're still adapting. This might be our last chance to use it effectively. Lieutenant Eric Johnson volunteered to lead the most dangerous part of the operation. While the main fleet engaged the Krell in space, a small team would infiltrate the aliens' flagship and plant explosives in its power core. It's a one-way trip, Miller warned him. Even if you succeed, you might not make it back. I understand, sir, Eric replied, but someone has to do it. The day before Operation Firestorm was set to begin, a message arrived from the Krell. Their supreme commander, Drac Moore, had finally revealed himself. His image appeared on screens across Earth and throughout the Resistance fleet. Humans, he said, his voice cold and mechanical through the translation system. Your resistance is becoming annoying. We have been merciful until now, allowing many of you to live as workers. This mercy ends today. The image shifted to show one of the structures the Krell had been building. It was a massive energy weapon pointing down at Earth from orbit. We have constructed 6 planet killers around your world, Drakmore continued. Each can destroy a continent. Unless all resistance ceases immediately, we will demonstrate their power on what you call Australia. You have 6 hours to surrender. Miller looked at Lisa Rodriguez. Can we be ready in 6 hours? Lisa nodded. We'll have to be. I'll contact Samantha and tell her to move up the timetable. Across Earth, resistance forces prepared for battle. They had planned for 2 more days of preparation, but now they had only hours. Weapons were distributed. Positions were taken. The Prometheus protocol was prepared for global activation. In space, the United Resistance Fleet moved into position. The Voidoran reinforcements arrived early, their sleek ships joining Miller's ragtag armada. All ships report ready, Admiral. Susan Adams, now Miller's second-in-command, announced. And Johnson's team? Already deployed. They're approaching the flagship now. Miller took a deep breath. Send the signal to Earth. Tell them we're starting now. On Earth, Samantha received the message. It's time, she told her forces. Activate the Prometheus protocol. Alan Carter pressed the button. Across the planet, hidden transmitters sent out a precisely calibrated electromagnetic pulse. Krell systems began to fail. Their ships drifted in orbit. Their ground vehicles stopped. Their weapons went silent. In the confusion, Eric Johnson's team successfully boarded the Krell flagship. They moved quickly through the corridors, planting explosives at key structural points. They're going to feel this one, Eric said as they reached the main power core. This was the heart of the ship, a massive chamber pulsing with energy that humans had never seen before. As they worked, an alarm sounded. The Krell were adapting faster than expected. Some systems were coming back online. We need more time, one of Eric's team members said. Eric made a quick decision. All of you, get back to the shuttle, I'll finish here. Lieutenant, we can't leave you. That's an order. Eric interrupted. Someone needs to make it back to tell them it worked. Reluctantly, his team left him. Eric continued planting the explosives around the power core. He could hear Krell soldiers approaching. In space, the battle had begun. The human and Voidoran ships attacked the Krell fleet. Without their advanced shields, the alien vessels were vulnerable. But there were still hundreds of them against Miller's much smaller force. Focus fire on the planet killers, Miller ordered. Those are the priority targets. On Earth, Samantha led the assault on the New York Command Center. The resistance fighters moved through the streets, engaging Krell-Theran soldiers whose advanced weapons were now useless. But the aliens were still physically powerful and they fought back with simpler weapons. "Push forward," Samantha shouted as they approached the former UN building. "We need to take the command center before their systems come back online." Across the planet, similar battles were being fought. Resistance cells attacked Krell-Theran bases and freed human prisoners. For the first time since the invasion, the aliens were on the defensive. In orbit, one of the planet killers began to power up. The Prometheus protocol was wearing off faster than expected. "They're targeting Australia," Susan reported. "Energy levels rising." Miller ordered every available ship to concentrate fire on that weapon. But would it be enough? And what about the other 5 planet killers? As the battle raged around him, Miller could only hope that Eric Johnson would complete his mission in time. Everything depended on disabling that flagship before the Krell-Theran could coordinate their forces and bring their most devastating weapons to bear. The war for Earth had entered its final, desperate phase. Lieutenant Eric Johnson worked quickly as the sounds of Krell-Theran soldiers grew closer. The flagship's power core pulsed with alien energy in front of him. He had placed explosives at key points, but there was a problem. The ship's systems were coming back online faster than expected. The timer wouldn't work. Someone would need to trigger the detonation manually. Eric checked his weapon and prepared for his final stand. He opened a communication channel to the Valiant. "Admiral Miller, this is Johnson. Explosives are in place, but I'll need to trigger them manually. There won't be time for me to get out." Miller's voice came back, filled with static. "Eric, there has to be another way." "There isn't, sir. But when this flagship goes down, the Krell-Theran fleet will lose coordination. That's your window to take out those planet killers." There was a pause before Miller responded. "We won't waste the chance you're giving us. Earth will remember what you did today." Eric smiled sadly. "Just make sure we win, sir." The door to the power core burst open. Krell-Theran soldiers poured in, their weapons now functioning again. Eric took cover behind a console and fired back. He just needed to hold them off long enough to reach the detonator. In space, the battle raged across Earth's orbit. The Valiant shook as enemy fire struck its hull. Admiral Miller held onto his command chair as damage reports flooded in. "Shield generators are failing," Susan reported. "Hull breaches on decks 3 and 4. Miller nodded grimly. "Maintain fire on those planet killers. We can't let them target the surface." The Voidaran ships were taking heavy losses too, but they had managed to destroy one of the 6 planet killers. 5 remained, and one of them was still powering up to fire on Australia. "Admiral," a communications officer called. "Colonel Wright is reporting progress on the ground." In New York, Samantha's forces had fought their way to the former UN building. The resistance fighters moved room by room, clearing out the Krell-Theran defenders. Samantha herself led the push toward the central command room. "Dr. Carter, what's the status of the Prometheus protocol?" she asked over her radio. "It's failing faster than we expected," Alan replied from their backup position. "The Krell-Theran are adapting. I estimate 20 more minutes before their systems are fully operational again." "Then we have 20 minutes to end this," Samantha said. She turned to her fighters. "This is it. Beyond that door is the Krell-Theran command center. Taking it will cripple their ground operations worldwide." They breached the door and found themselves in a massive room filled with alien technology. Krell-Theran officers turned to face them, drawing weapons. At the center stood a tall figure Samantha recognized from broadcasts, Drakmor himself, the supreme commander of the invasion force. "Humans," Drakmor said, his voice cold, "your resistance ends here." On the Krell-Theran flagship, Eric Johnson was down to his last few rounds of ammunition. He had been hit twice, and blood soaked his uniform, but he had almost reached the detonator. The aliens were closing in from all sides. With a final effort, Eric lunged for the detonator. His hand closed around it as enemy fire tore into him. With his last strength, he pressed the button. The Krell-Theran flagship exploded in a massive fireball that lit up Earth's orbit. The blast damaged nearby alien vessels and sent a shockwave through their formation. "Lieutenant Johnson has done it," Susan announced on the Valiant's bridge. "The flagship is gone." Miller allowed himself only a moment of grief for Eric and his team. "The Krell Theron fleet is in disarray. All ships, concentrate fire on the planet killers." The combined human and Voidaran fleets surged forward. Without the flagship to coordinate them, the Krell Theron vessels fell into confusion. 2 more planet killers were destroyed in quick succession. In New York, Samantha faced off against Drakmor. The alien commander was physically imposing, easily 7 feet tall with armored skin. He swung a weapon that crackled with energy, barely missing Samantha as she dodged. "Your species is primitive," Drakmor snarled. "You were meant to serve the Dominion, not fight it." "We were meant to be free," Samantha replied, firing her weapon. The shot struck Drakmor but didn't penetrate his armor. He laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the command center. At that moment, Alan Carter's voice came through Samantha's radio. "Colonel, I've managed to remotely access their command systems. The self-destruct sequence is ready." "Do it," Samantha ordered. Alarms blared throughout the building. Drakmor turned to his console in surprise, giving Samantha the opening she needed. She charged forward, tackling the alien commander. They crashed into the main control panel together. "Everyone out now," Samantha shouted to her fighters. "This place is going to blow." In space, the tide had turned. 4 of the 6 planet killers had been destroyed. The 5th was badly damaged and drifting, but the 6th had completed its power-up sequence. "It's targeting North America now," Susan reported. "Every ship we have, focus on that last planet killer," Miller ordered. The Valiant was barely holding together. Multiple decks were exposed to space, and life support was failing. But Miller pushed the ship forward, leading what might be their final charge. The Voidaran ships joined them, forming a spearhead aimed at the last planet killer. They took devastating fire from the remaining Krell Theron vessels, but they pressed on. "Weapons range in 10 seconds. Susan counted down. On Earth, Samantha's forces evacuated the UN building as the self-destruct sequence counted down. Samantha herself was still inside, fighting Drakmor. The alien commander had her pinned down, his clawed hand at her throat. "Your resistance was impressive, human," he said. "But ultimately futile." Samantha smiled through bloodied lips. "Look, around you. Your command center is about to explode. Your flagship is gone. Your fleet is losing. We may die here, but Earth will be free." The realization dawned on Drakmor's alien features. He had failed. The supposedly easy conquest of Earth had turned into a devastating defeat. In space, the Valiant and its allies fired everything they had at the last planet killer. Their combined firepower finally overwhelmed its defenses. The massive weapon exploded just as it was about to fire. "We did it," Susan whispered as cheers erupted across the bridge. Miller nodded, his eyes on the blue planet below. "Send the signal. Tell everyone on Earth that the skies are clear." Across the planet, resistance fighters received the news and pressed their advantage against the now leaderless Krell Theron forces. In New York, the UN building exploded, taking Drakmor and the Krell Theron command structure with it. Samantha had managed to escape just in time, dragging herself clear of the blast. As she watched the building collapse, her radio crackled with messages from around the world. Everywhere, the aliens were surrendering or retreating. 3 days later, Admiral Miller stood on the Valiant's observation deck, looking at Earth. Lisa Rodriguez joined him, carrying a tablet with reports from the surface. "The cleanup will take years," she said, "but we've won. The last Krell Theron forces are surrendering." "At what cost?" Miller asked quietly, thinking of Eric Johnson and countless others who had died. "A terrible one," Lisa admitted. "But we're free, and we're not alone anymore." She gestured to where Kalasor and other Voidaran representatives were meeting with Earth's leaders. New alliances were forming, new friendships across the stars. 1 month later, a memorial was held in what had once been Central Park. A simple stone monument was erected, bearing the names of those who had given their lives to free Earth. The top were the words that had become humanity's battle cry. They tried to force Earth to kneel, We answered with fire. Samantha Wright, now General Wright, stood beside Dr. Alan Carter as they placed flowers at the monument. Admiral Miller joined them, along with Lisa Rodriguez and representatives from a dozen alien species who had fought the Dominion. "What happens now?" Alan asked. Miller looked up at the stars, where Earth's new defensive fleet was being built. "Now we make sure this never happens again. Not to us. Not to anyone." The Krell-Theran had come expecting an easy victory over a primitive world. Instead, they had awakened something they couldn't understand: the unbreakable human spirit. Against all odds, humanity had not only survived but emerged stronger, taking its place among the stars not as conquered subjects but as equals. Earth would never kneel.